Good evening, and welcome to the October 21st, 2025 regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. The first item of business tonight is the approval of the September 16th, 2025 meeting minutes. Does anyone have anything to say about these? Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a couple of corrections, if I could, put those out there. On page 7 of the minutes, page 11 of our packet, on the top paragraph, which really is like half the page, but about 7 or so lines down, there's a sentence that says, Mr. Ramos said a lot of it was driven by the fact that the property has 2 front yards, and if Partridge Street did not exist in terms of positioning the second structure, accessory structure would be allowed. Sorry, that's actually not the sentence I wanted to change. It's the next sentence. He said the property would want to mitigate the flooding issue. I would like to add the word owner in there, so the property owner would want to mitigate the flooding issue. A little further down that same paragraph, there is a sentence that began, he said he had concerns about putting pavement right up against the neighboring property line, but that the applicant would provide a more respectful setback. In that sentence, I would like to have it read against the neighboring property line on Prey Street. So that was an important part because the alternative was to put pavement right up to the neighboring property on Prey Street side. Further down on page 9 of the minutes, page 13 of our packet, there's a second paragraph down, begins, Mr. Rayam concurred. He said the included condition put the board into the review of the experts. Really, what I said was, he said that the included condition put the application into the review of the experts, not the board. Mm-hmm. And then a little further down on page 11 of the minutes, page 15 of our packet, in the section decision of the board, there's the timestamp, there's the italicized that I moved to grant. The second sentence, very lengthy sentence, starting on the third line goes, surrounded by lots of woods that, due to the wetlands, a paper street never got built and the property might not get developed in the future. I think it's important to note that's the second property. So if you remember right, this application had 2 pieces of property that the applicant owned. And my point was that the second property that currently had nothing on it was unlikely to get developed because of the wetlands. And that is all the extent of my corrections. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Neese.
I suggest one addition on the first page of the motion, first paragraph. We had a couple postponements, and in the past our typical approach has been to have a motion for postponements. There was not a motion here, but that's due to the change in our rules, which allows postponements to be approved if they're submitted in advance of the meeting, which I think was the case for these postponements.
Yes.
So my suggestion is just to add a quick sentence that says something like, in accordance with the rules of the board, these were postponed. As it reads now, it almost reads as if we forgot to make a motion.
No, that's a very good point. Thank you.
Yeah, concur, because there's the decision of the board precedes that. It really wasn't a decision by the board per se. It was a decision in accordance with our rules. So, agree.
And I defer to the staff to word that however they want.
Good luck.
And Ms. Margerson.
My sole correction is on page 10 of our packet, page 6 of the meeting minutes. It says no one else spoke and Chair Eldridge closed the public hearing. That was actually me, Acting Chair Margerson. So if you can make that change, and that is the sole substantive correction I have to our meeting minutes. And with that, I move that we approve them with the suggested corrections.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Then the minutes are approved. The next item of business is the request of Charlie Neal and Joe McCarthy, owners, for property located at 28 Whidden Street, whereas relief is needed to construct an addition to the rear of the structure, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to allow A, 42% building coverage where 30 is allowed, B, rear yard where 25 feet are required, and 2, variance from the section 10.321 to allow a non-conforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 102, Lot 64, and lies within the General Residence B and Historic Districts. Is there anyone to speak to this petition? Oh, and yes, and Mr. Neese is recused. Yes, but it's not going to.
Good evening. So because we only have 5 members of the board, we would like to, am I using the word postpone or, yeah, postpone to next week's meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, Madam Chair, in light of
No
the fact
vote.
that there are only 5 voting members, I would make a motion to postpone this to the next, we're proposing to delay it 1 week and hear it at our next scheduled meeting.
28th.
On the 28th of October.
Second?
Yeah, just if we could, do we know if Board Member Rossi will be here? Otherwise, it would be
We
the
do.
same scenario. Okay.
We do know he's back in town.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, then
We
I
do.
second.
So we expect a fuller board. All in favor? Oh, well, that wasn't a second. Is there a
Oh,
second?
it is a second.
Oh, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No. Okay, we will see you next week.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Neese, you may join us. Okay. The next item of business is the request of Carrie and Gabrielle Edwards for property located at 51 Morning Street, whereas relief is needed to demolish the existing garage and construct a new attached garage with office space, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to allow A, 51% building coverage where 25% is allowed. B, 4-foot left side yard where 10 feet are required. C, 3.5-foot rear yard where 20 feet are required. D, 21.5% open space where 30% is required. And 2, variance from section 10.321 to allow a nonconforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 163, Lot 16, and lies within the General Residence A District. Is there anyone to speak to this petition?
Good evening, Chair Eldridge, Monica Kaiser from Hopeful Phoenix, Gormley and Roberts, on behalf of Carrie Edwards. With me is Paul Doberstein from Stakes and Stone Surveying, and Jen Ramsey did the architectural work. She cannot be here this evening. I would just ask a point of clarification with the reduced board members. I'm remembering there's something peculiar about your rules, so I just want to double check.
We only have 5.
Right,
So
so,
we have 6 for you this evening. so-
okay, so I'm good. I
Yeah,
need,
no recusals, yes.
It requires four affirmative
I'm
votes.
sorry.
That's what I was looking
It does,
for.
I didn't know.
Thank you.
Yes, it requires 4 affirmative votes, but
Right.
at 6, we don't automatically.
yeah, understood. I
Okay.
just was, I knew there
Thank
was
you.
something particular. All right, I'd like to, if the board members find it a little bit easier, I have a color up that I'd like to give you. It's the same plan, just in color. It may be a little easier to read.
Okay,
This is just the proposed conditions. Will you take Pat's?
I sure can.
So most of us have most of us come into Portsmouth if we come from the Woodbury neck of the woods. We don't necessarily travel on Morning Street. We travel on Woodbury and then wind around onto Bartlett. This property is on Morning Street across from the Makerspace. If anyone's been over to the Makerspace. So this is a very tiny property, 3,326 square foot lot. It's quite narrow at 44 feet wide. the primary home has a couple of, it's kind of like a New Englander in that over time it expanded in the back to the condition that exists today. There are some great pictures of the current garage in your packet. If, Steph, you can go to those Google pictures, yeah. So you can see that is the home from the front and the garage in the back. There is probably another shot a little bit closer to the garage. You can see that it's kind of listing a little bit to the right. And then one more picture in, you can see that it's impacted by a tree in the back corner of this lot. And then the next picture, Steph, is an area that exists between the current house and that garage. And this proposal essentially seeks to fill in that area and extend the garage, forward a little bit. That is the size of it. The proposal is to remove that failing garage and replace that garage with a 2-story structure that connects over to the existing home. The setbacks, if you go back to the plan or look at the one in front of you that I've handed out, you'll see the result of the project brings the new garage structure further from the left side setback and a little bit further from the rear as well compared to existing conditions. Because of that movement and increase in space on the right side, on the left side, that is increasing our open space. So we're able to propose, while we have this increase in building coverage, we have a corresponding slight improvement in overall open space. If you look at the tax map for, which is Exhibit D, you can get a sense of how this property compares with others in the neighborhood. You can see it certainly is not the smallest property in the neighborhood, but is certainly on the smaller side, particularly in comparison to the property on the left and the 2 properties behind it. You can also get a sense from looking at the tax map about other existing nonconformities regarding setbacks in the neighborhood. And there are also some rather small lots with significant building coverage as well. Does anyone have any question about the project I've outlined?
Ms. Murchison.
So the raised patio, that is replacing existing open space, or that's counting towards the open space?
There
Is
is
it
no
what
change
is?
to the existing patio, and that does qualify as open space.
Okay.
The only change is the removal of the garage and replacement of the garage structure then connecting to the house. If you look at the elevation plans, the architectural plans, maybe, yes, that's it. Hold the top button for the pointer. So it's hard to tell because they're so close together, but this is the existing view from the front. You have the small garage, and then you have the house, which sort of sticks out on the right side, and it has that raised patio in front of it. So the proposal, oh, I didn't mean to do that. The proposal is to take from that and go to that, where you still have a garage, but you have a garage with a second floor. So the view from the front doesn't change a lot except adding that second story. In the rear, you can tell a little bit more that the result is filling in this area between the garage and the house. I'm looking right now at the existing, where you see the two structures quite close together but not incorporated, and the proposed is a fully incorporated garage. So existing here, proposed here.
Are you okay?
Well, just one more question. So the picture doesn't show the structure towards the right side of the property. It looks like just a straight New Englander going back and.
Yeah, that may be the angle. We could certainly take a walk through street view if you wanted. You can see on the first page of Exhibit C, you can see right under the red dot that the house sort of goes, it sort of spreads in both directions a little bit. So the house is here, and then you can see it juts out in the back on the right side. That has existed. I reviewed the building file just yesterday, and that has existed for a very long time. There are some photographs in the building file back related to an application in 2004. And if I can approach, I'll just let you look at this.
Sure. I mean,
Yes, sure.
need to usurp your
No,
authority.
that's fine. Can we will pass this and get it back to you, please. Mr. Neese, your question?
Yes, Madam Chair, I've got a couple of questions. So my first question is, back in 2004, the zoning board approved an addition that resulted in 38% lot coverage. And the current conditions say the existing lot coverage is 41%. Do we know what changed between 2004 and now to give that extra 3%?
That's one reason why I went up to the town hall to look. I can tell you that the proposal in 2004 was to remove addition number 1, and the photographs I'm circulating identifies which addition that is. It says on the application 13 by 18 and 6 by 7 to rebuild with proper footings and a second floor. Addition number 1, I have the picture too, but you have one also, right? We're all looking at, is addition number 1 labeled in that picture?
Yes.
Yeah, so you can see that was kind of like the connector from the front of the house to the back area. I can't tell you, maybe Steph can, what may have changed in how building coverage is calculated. But it appears to me that the setback information didn't change much. It was, and it's, 20 years ago. So I'm afraid I don't have a great answer, but I can tell you that the information presented was not a survey, but it was showing all of the components of the house that we see now. And it doesn't look like, and it doesn't look like addition 1 expanded in size at all. So I don't know if somebody was erroneously counting, other elements or the patio or what.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple other
Go
questions.
ahead.
I want to preface this one with, my comment is going to refer to differences of inches, but I want to make sure we approve what needs to be approved and it gets handled correctly. You pointed out that according to your application, the rear yard setback is improved from 3.7 feet to 3.8, so an inch or so. The staff memo, however, and you use that as a rationale, one of the rationales for approval of the variance. The staff memo, however, says that the rear yard setback is worse and goes from 3.7 to 3.5. Now, this really is an almost inconsequential difference in terms of an actual measurement, but it does impact potentially what we might use for justification for the variance. And I'm just curious if between the applicant and the staff, if we know why this difference exists.
I can only say maybe that's a typo or difficulty reading the plan, but the plan clearly identifies on the pictorial part of the plan and then also at the bottom
Okay,
where
excuse
it
me,
says
the
exist.
staff has some input.
It's okay. Yeah, so that's a typical rounding that staff usually rounds to the most conservative half foot. So that's why we rounded from 3.7 to 3.5 to account for any discrepancies. If the board wants to stipulate that the approval, if they decide to give approval, is for 3.8, that's totally within your purview.
Or the board, or the other alternative is just don't use an improvement as a part of the justification for approval. Okay, thank you. And I have one last question. You pointed out that a lot of these other properties are also densely developed in the area. Did you do any calculations on lot coverage for any of the others, just to give us an idea of what they look like?
I have not. I'm happy to do that if you would like. I can tell you that certainly with respect to the three abutting properties, it doesn't appear that the building coverage is near close to what we're proposing. The gentleman next door on the left appears to have, a double or a triple lot, and the people behind Miss Edwards appear to have a rather long lot, and maybe a bit wider as well. But some of the others, you can tell by looking at them that the building coverage exceeds, or approaches 50.
Thank you. Done.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I have questions, but they're really more related, kind of like Mr. Neese's last question. They're more related to the criteria, which I believe the applicant is yet to go through.
Right. So we're going to go back to you.
Okay.
I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, Paul, I didn't see you.
Just a
Prior
quick
to-
question
Okay.
on the layout you gave. When was the raised patio put in?
I do not know. I don't think I have that information. Let me just look at those pictures. It doesn't look like it existed in 2004.
Okay, my next question is, how much is it raised?
Needs to be less than 18 inches, right? Mm-hmm. Paul?
Yes, I have those numbers. About half.
Good evening, Paul Dauber, Science State Consultants, Land Spring. So approximately half of the patio is less than 18 inches, and the rest of it maxes out at about 2 feet. We were advised when we met with staff that it still counted as open space, so we counted the entire patio area.
So half the patio is
About half the patio, yes.
greater than 18 inches.
Yes.
There's your discrepancy on building coverage.
If the staff saw it differently previously.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Can I just ask one more?
Yes.
Sorry.
Before criteria?
Before criteria, it
Okay.
doesn't deal with the criteria.
I mean,
Okay, but reference what grade?
The existing ground.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
there's no variance.
I can try to do some further research with Street View, but my client purchased the property about 4 years ago. It was there. It appears to have been there, just for looking at it, for some time. I am happy, however, I understand the distinction that you're drawing, and I think it's important. I'm going to guess that that accounts for the discrepancy at issue. Steph, were you involved in the meeting that Paul is referencing?
I believe that was right when I came back. I'd have to look back at my notes to really dig into what we covered.
Understood. Did you show this to staff?
No, that was done after.
Excuse me, we need to have it, be able to hear everything.
Sorry, I was just asking what information. It sounds like staff was presented a similar plan to what you're looking at right now.
Before we get to criteria, Ms. Margison has another
I
question.
just want to beat a dead horse. So this right here I don't know if the people at home can see this.
You're looking at the green area?
Yeah, so the area right here and right there is those two other buildings, the connector and then the building in the back. So they abut this little open space area, the patio area.
Yeah.
So that is the little structure that goes back to the other structure. It's here on this other photograph. So I just want to make sure that that is here on the plan.
I don't understand.
Okay, so we have the New Englander in the front, and then we have a connecting structure to another structure in the back.
Yep.
That is represented on this plan, and it abuts the raised patio.
Yes.
Okay.
If you look at sheet 1, Exhibit A, the first page is the existing conditions plan. I think that shows that clearly.
Okay, just want to make sure in terms of this. Thank you.
There may be something lost in translation around open space and building coverage, given that certain types of landscaping are permitted and still count as open space, but the more recent revisions in terms of building coverage may apply differently.
Okay.
So to proceed to the criteria, starting with the first two, which we always take together, the variances will not be contrary to the public interest. The spirit of the ordinance is observed. We're looking at, under the case law, determining whether granting a variance would unduly and to a marked degree conflict with the ordinance such that it violates the ordinance's basic zoning objectives. Mere conflict is not enough, as we always say. Looking at the purpose of your ordinance, we go through and analyze the project against the purposes of your ordinance. We propose to continue a permitted residential use on a dimensionally undersized, decades-old lot of record. That information is also in your packet, the deed history. The intensity of land use will remain that of a single-family home with a single-family garage. The difference is that there'll be some office space above, where right now 2 separate structures exist. Unchanged compliant parking, the impact of outdoor lighting, noise, and vibration and the like is not necessarily an issue with a single-family use. Stormwater runoff, I would submit, are improved by particularly on the left side because there's a significant increase there. Again, we're dealing with small dimensions all around, but there is a greater increase on the left side than there is certainly on the rear side. I think the preservation and enhancement of the visual environment is served by replacing the garage as it sits. We are not in the historic district, and we are not abutting any wetlands. The variances are driven entirely by the very small size of this lot, which is just about half the size of a compliant 7,500 square foot lot. Another a way to analyze this is to determine whether granting the variance would violate the basic zoning objectives, or whether it would alter essential character of the locality or threaten the public health, safety, and welfare. We don't think that it will alter the essential character of the locality. It's going to maintain the same use, and certainly throughout Portsmouth, we have seen this kind of integration between a more dilapidated accessory structure becoming connected to an existing single-family home. So for that reason, I would say that there is no essential alteration of the character of the locality, nor any threat to public health, safety, and welfare. Substantial justice is done. You're considering it's a balancing test to determine whether if there's no benefit to the public that would outweigh to the hardship to the applicant, this factor satisfied. Any loss to the applicant not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. One thing I would point out is that as you look at the plan, the proposed structure is behind a rather large garage building on the abutting lot to the left. I think if you go back through the pictures, you can see that structure on the second Google picture, and as well on the third or fourth Google picture. So it's a rather imposing garage. So in some way that's going to also close to the, in that case, the rear setback. So that's going to blunt the impact of that garage to that neighbor on the left side. Granting the variance will not diminish the surrounding property values. Again, this is a transitional area. It is sort of industrial-ish on one side and residential on the other. Many small lots, heavily developed. There are some sort of two families over in that neck of the woods as well. So I would suggest to you that the improvement that's going to result is not going to diminish the surrounding property values. Special conditions exist given the size of this property, area-wise, as well as its narrowness. And you can see that the existence of the building envelope reference the structures that are already there doesn't exactly square. Those extensions on the back on either side certainly well predate my client and have existed for many, many years. And I would say that that size and the narrowness, the existing house and structures all combine to create special conditions. No fair and substantial relationship exists where we are slightly improving open space, slightly improving yard setbacks, and there is this sort of no man's land between the structure, the house on the right and this garage on the left. Nothing can really grow there. There is some grass in some of the pictures, but it gets muddy, and it's just sort of not big enough to use as any kind of yard. So it seems reasonable to repurpose it, fill it in, and get essentially what is storage space for overall a very modest house in this small lot. The improvements, I think, will manage the stormwater and improve conditions compared to what exists now. And as we have often argued to you, that connecting a single-car garage to a house and on a non-conforming lot of record is fairly common and reasonable. So for those reasons, I would encourage you to grant the request.
Mr. Ram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, and you touched on one aspect of what my question is, but there's still one unanswered piece to this. And so a lot of your discussion for saying that you're meeting the criteria rests around, hey, I'm only adding so much square footage here. Yeah, it's a small lot. Part of our concern here, as well as just the overall square footage, is the intensity of the proposed development on the square footage. In this case, a pretty substantial two-story addition that's replacing a pretty small little one-story. Yeah, okay, so it's got a gambrel roof, so it's a little bit higher, but a relatively modest one-story little garage with, pretty substantial two-story. I know you said, well, we are filling in a kind of useless area, adding some storage space, but there's really more to it than that. There's this second floor office that's being added in as well. So looking at page 48 of our packet, it is your plans, part of your Exhibit B, last page of your Exhibit B. So you did talk to the middle elevation, so proposed southwest elevation, i.e. the driveway, and said, hey, there's a garage on the neighboring property that kind of mirrors what we're proposing to build over our garage. It's pretty substantial. I guess my second piece of that is the proposed northwest elevation down in the lower right-hand corner of that drawing, which is what is going to be seen from the neighbor to the rear of the property. And again, this pretty substantial two-story structure is set back less than 4 feet, 3.5, 3.7, 3.8, pick your number, something less than 4 feet away from that property line. Why do you think that doesn't have the impacts that we're normally concerned with light and air, overdevelopment on a lot, those kinds of considerations?
Well, if I recall the area correctly, from driving in that area, if you look at Exhibit D, the tax map, you can see that the folks directly behind, again, relying on the accuracy of the tax map depicting the structure, which I understand is an assumption, but I don't know if there's a way to zoom that in, Steph. Maybe not. Two things. Woodbury Avenue is higher in grade, and when you turn onto Morning Street from Woodbury Avenue, you go downhill toward the makerspace area and toward the railroad tracks. So those people up there on Woodbury Avenue are significantly higher, number one. Number two, the distance between the structures, those two houses on Woodbury Avenue, is significant because those are much longer lots. So there's a greater distance, it would appear, referencing the tax map, between those homes and this project than you might get in another situation.
Okay, thank you. And then just one other question on page 43 of our packet. It's the page 5 of 6 of your discussion. It's in the sections 3, substantial justice, done granting the variance. You have a sentence in there that you underlined that says there is absolutely no harm to the general public from granting relief. I didn't really hear you double down on that in your spoken arguments, but could you just explain that underlined absolutely no harm and how you feel that's justified?
I didn't write this memo. Attorney Phoenix wrote that memo. So I can only expect that what he's essentially saying is, adding on to a single-family house in this regard, given the circumstances on the lot and the long-standing nonconformity of the lot, and the other changes that I just referenced, are not going to harm any of the abutting properties. Why he might have been feeling particularly strong enough to underline, I cannot speak to.
Sure. It wasn't bolded as well, but it was underlined, so it caught my attention, and I thought it was a powerful statement. So thank you. I'm all set. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Okay, we will open it to the public. Thank you. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in opposition? Anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Then the public meeting is closed. Yes, Mr. Mantle.
I got a question for staff.
Okay.
Sorry, staff.
We're inquisitive tonight.
Okay, not to get picked on. The applicant is using the raised patio as open space. And they've said half of the raised patio is greater than 18 inches. And we've had discussions and applications before that any raised patio, outdoor space more than 18 inches is not considered open space, but considered a building.
I think the question is it a structure or not? Above 18 inches is considered a structure. The definition of open space is rather gray as far as raised patios. I did not give the opinion that it was 18 inches, but a planner above me did, so I have to defer to their judgment. That if they said half the patio is open space, then it is. That's my opinion. If
Okay.
the board doesn't see it that way, they can make a different opinion.
Okay, so if somebody put it in a patio that was greater than 18 inches, that affected because that patio greater than 18 inches affects the building coverage, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. Would they need a variance?
I think the question at hand is, I can't speak theoretically because there's a lot of things that can go along with that, but the question at hand is that patio is pavers, it's pervious, and it doesn't create more than 50, it doesn't encompass more than 50% of the total open space calculation. That is what they're going off of.
Okay, but again,
Even though it's above 18 inches, it still is considered open space under the definition of open space.
correct. Again, my question is, if somebody puts in a patio greater than 18 inches, that gets included in building coverage, correct?
Yes.
And that building coverage exceeds what is
Just
permitted.
because it's
Do
building
they need a
coverage does not
variance?
mean it's open space, and vice versa.
Okay. I'm asking, do they need a variance for the patio?
And the answer is no. Steph is saying no, that was the opinion of the planning department.
Okay.
Did I interpret that correctly?
Well, he's asking a question about
In the
building coverage,
future.
and this, we're talking about open space, and they're two different things, and they don't
Okay.
have the same
Okay.
definition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so I would just like to, give my thoughts, a few things. One, specific to the point that Mr. Mantle just raised, we don't know that, we don't actually, couldn't find in here anywhere where there's a detailed calculation that shows how they came up with the 43% coverage. As we talked about, maybe that's why there's a difference between the 38% of the previous approval and 43% now, recognizing that this patio is raised and is included as part of the building coverage that the applicant is claiming. But we don't know that entirely for certain. It could be one way or the other. And as staff has pointed out, our open space calculation is one second only to roof heights, is probably our second most quizzical way that we go and calculate things in our zoning ordinance. So all that aside, I think those are nits on a much larger set of issues associated with this property. And that is that, in my mind, the applicant is trying to put a lot onto a small property. So the property is already pretty significantly developed. The applicant is proposing to basically replace the garage with something that's quite a bit taller. And again, so the applicant has said, hey, I'm moving a little bit further away from the property line, but for the math that we use and the fudge factors that we want to give, because we know that nothing ever gets built down to the half inch, it's, we want to have that half foot increment buffer. So realistically, saying that I'm somehow farther away from the back property line is really nonsensical for us. Saying that I have more open space coverage than I had before, in my mind, is pretty much nonsensical to us. Really, that's a mathematical thing where they're pushing the building back just enough that they can claim a little bit more of what's existing, lawn or mud or whatever is currently there as additional open space. So those two factors in my mind play no role here. This really comes down to, do we believe that there's enough justification to put what in my mind is a pretty substantial two-story addition, pretty much right up against the back property line, and really taking up a fair amount of the building coverage. Is there enough aspects about that that are okay? And I am kind of torn about it. It's GRC. I'm sorry, it's GRA. If this was GRC, that would be, it's GRE 7,500 square foot lot area. GRC is 3,500 square feet. But even when it comes to the setbacks, there's the ones that really matter to this application. The 10-foot side setback is the same between GRC and GRA, even though it's related to a smaller lot. Because I know one of the arguments here is hey, we're a smaller lot than what is applicable to the GRA. So, these setbacks that we have really are unfair to us. Well, that's not entirely true. Even in a GRC, you'd still need a 10-foot side setback. And it is still the same 20-foot rear yard setback. So in terms of relief within our zoning ordinance to say that a smaller lot can be built up more, the overall lot coverage does increase to 35% for GRC versus 25%. So again, they would still be above that. They're asking for over 50% of the lot coverage, right? They're still above the 35% that GRC has. The only one saving grace that they do get is GRC has 20% minimum open space versus the 30%. So they would probably just sneak in right above that 20% minimum if they were in fact zoned GRC rather than GRA. I do kind of buy into the applicant's arguments somewhat in the sense that they are fortunate that the property right behind them, as they have pointed out, the sort of the curved tail end of Woodbury Avenue is at a higher elevation than Morning Street, pretty significantly higher elevation. And that probably does sort of reduce some of the impact of this two-story addition. Plus, there is some empty space back there relative to that one particular property abutter. And then on the other side, they are butting up closely up against a garage. Not like it's going to be right up against somebody's bedroom window or something along those lines. So I think those a couple of the things that help them. But again, it's just an overall, there's an awful lot of intensity on a very small lot. Do we want to contribute to that with a, in my mind, is a pretty substantial two-story addition.
Mr. Mattson.
Share some thoughts as well. Normally I'm really all for getting into the nitty-gritty details, but on this specific project, I think taking a step back can be helpful. I definitely had some similar questions and thoughts about the coverage and the patio and whatnot. But at the fundamental level, a patio is open to the sky, so it's whether, and in this case, it happens to also be pervious, but it is essentially open, and I think it also, the effect of it, that portion isn't changing with this proposal. So the overall effect wouldn't be impacted one way or the other, even though I understand it would affect the calculations. And then related to the overall effect here, the proposed addition is all happening is like infill away from the edges, basically connecting a space that's already there. I think the applicant, there was some notion of downplaying the size of the addition. I think this is a decent size addition, so it's not an obvious approval or denial for that matter, which is what I'm struggling with. But the point is that it is the addition would be happening in the central portion of the property where the buildable lot is located, or within the building setbacks. And then this additional factor of it is a significant grade change as you go up towards Woodbury, so that can mitigate the effect a bit of a second-story addition there. So yeah, I guess those are my thoughts.
A motion, anybody? Mr.
No, I don't have a motion, I just have some general comments, sorry. I think the setback changes are relatively minor. They don't influence me one way or the other. I don't think they really justify the approval. As has been pointed out by previous speakers, I think the big issue is the lot coverage, or the building coverage, however you want to word it. There is at least one other lot on that street, I think 2 doors down, which has over 50% lot coverage, but many of the others are in the 35, 40, somewhere percent range. So this is significantly bigger. A couple things I like about this project that have been pointed out is that because of the slope from Woodbury Avenue down, I think this has relatively little impact at all, or no impact at all, on the light and air for the people on Woodbury Avenue. They are currently primarily looking over that property above the roof line, and they still will be. That won't change. The other thing I think I appreciate, which gives me a little bit more comfort, is if you go down Morning Street, there's a couple buildings, most of the buildings are right there on the street. And some of them are basically side to side from the lot line. This one, however, because the addition is set back from the front of the street, it doesn't present that image. So that helps, I think, with the idea of, the change in lot coverage is happening in a spot that right now nobody really sees. There's that space between the building and the garage in the back, which technically is right now it doesn't apply to lot coverage. Nobody can tell that. That's not providing any light and air to anybody except maybe the owner of this house. So I'm not sure losing that is a big deal. I do struggle, though, I got to admit, with 51% lot coverage on a lot like this.
Be a great motion. Okay. Yes, Ms. Margerson.
So I too am struggling with this. I absolutely think this addition is just too much for this lot. I almost think the applicant would have been better off sort of demolishing both structures in the back and adding on to the main structure. 51% lot coverage on a very teeny lot. I don't think it impacts so much the neighbor to the left and obviously to the back, but there's just a lot of building being put onto this lot. I think it's probably a little bit too much for me.
Anybody?
Sorry, just 2 more quick comments. I apologize. To Mr. Mattson's point, said, hey, it's kind of happening in the middle of the property. I would disagree with that. It's happening on the back end of the property. It's pretty much right up against the property line. I think there's probably enough room there that you could probably get a ladder up successfully to do, clean your windows and do some minimum maintenance on your gutters and whatnot, should we allow this to be built. But we don't entirely know what the impact is on the back neighbor. Certainly it's not in terms of something of, staring into their windows, bedroom windows or anything, but we don't exactly know how the next door neighbor uses that back portion of their property. And I think this will be somewhat impactful as it's so substantial. That to me is the balancing test we have to weigh, right? And then, the other part is I wish I would have had maybe a bit more definitive information from the applicant on exactly what the conditions are in the neighborhood that would sort of say the 50% coverage is not that out of line. I know there's some, the student will obviously notice that kind of language in the application, but, no specific map like Mr. Neese asked for. I know that Attorney Pielich, God rest his soul, would ask a paralegal to go and, use a highlighter for, mapping out different little things in the neighborhood, properties and whatnot. But at least he gave you a great little visual of, these are in a similar situation. These are a little bit more, these are a little bit less. We don't have that in this case. I would have liked to have seen that to help maybe make a more convincing argument here. Try and get AI to, make little colored blocks like that. So paralegals are still useful. That's my only comment.
Okay. Anybody? Anybody? I can't.
I'll try a
I knew we could
motion
count on
to grant the variance as presented. If I get a second.
Is there a second for Mr. Mattson?
So I've got a question here. I hate to quibble over inches, but is the motion as presented or as advertised? As presented suggests that we're giving them 3.8 feet and back. As
Yeah.
advertised says we're giving them 3.5. And I don't want to have something come back over 3 inches later down the road.
Yeah,
Isn't there a certain iffy space?
Just say, as presented and advertised.
Looking at the inches that we-
can I say?
Madam Chair, I will second the motion to say as presented and advertised, if that is what the maker of the motion is willing to accept. Therefore, the advertised value is 3.5 feet.
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
okay, we have a second and a motion coming.
As
Thank you.
presented and advertised, yes. Okay, so to go through the criteria, we'll take the first two together. The variance is not contrary to the public interest and the spirit of the ordinance is observed. So the public interest here, there's not a huge effect on the public interest because from the street, the public area from the street, this addition, the bulk of the addition isn't very visible, other than the portion replacing the one-story garage. And then based on the surrounding neighbors' orientation and whatnot, it's not contrary to their public interest. And the spirit of the ordinance is observed. I definitely, when I first saw this application, the 51% building coverage really stood out to me, but what's solidified for me is it's entirely a driving factor is that the lot area is half the size of what's required here. So this same home or proposed home with the addition on a conforming lot would be half that building coverage. And that's significant because this lot is a bit smaller than the surrounding properties. So I think for that reason, the spirit of the ordinance is still observed, even though it can seem like a big proposed building coverage. But that building coverage would not be much more than what is effectively already there. So the next criteria is substantial justice is done. The benefit to the applicant here should not be outweighed by any harm to the general public or other individuals. And again, I think there's not really any harm to the public or other individuals, and this addition would be beneficial to the applicant. This is a small lot with a small structure on it, so any addition could be helpful. And then the next criteria is that the values of surrounding properties are not diminished. And here, this again is still just a single-family home. There's new construction happening here in a portion of the lot that isn't very visible from most locations from the public or even from the abutting neighbors based on the surroundings. So there's no reason to think that the surrounding properties' values will be diminished. And then for the final criteria, literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. And here, unnecessary hardship means that because of the conditions of this property, there's no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the ordinance and the specific application to this property, and that the proposed use is a reasonable one. And here, it's the proposed use is still continued to be a single-family home with this addition. And the point of the ordinance is to preserve light, air, and privacy. And because this addition is happening, admittedly, it's not entirely towards the center of the property. It is also towards the back. I think that it sufficiently, based on the grade change in the rear abutting property and the layout of the other abutters structures, and then this lot in itself is so small and narrow, and pretty much it's just a lot of building coverage for any normal sized house. So the application here of the ordinance to this property constitutes a hardship.
Does the second have anything to add?
Yeah, just, back to the presented and advertised, so it's been presented to us as being 3.8 away from the back property line. It's been advertised as 3.5. So we expect the applicant to make the 3.8, but if they accidentally find themselves a little bit closer, they do have the margin that the as advertised has given them. Secondly, when I was first reviewing this, I was really kind of like a hard no. I did not think that I would be in favor of it. I think I've talked my way through it, and I think the essential characteristics of the neighborhood, when you go down Morning Street, at least my impression of Morning Street when I've gone down it, when we've been detoured through it, because Woodbury Ave intersection was closed, it's very dense. It just feels very dense with the buildings, industrial buildings on one side, even the homes / almost sort of semi-industrial-ish smaller buildings on the opposite side. Feels very dense. What the applicant is asking for here is to really add some density, but it is to the back side of the lot. And again, I think the mitigating factor here is kind of that grade change, which makes me feel better about what we're looking at here. If back in the 1800s, the back property on Woodbury Ave and this property, had they been divided more evenly, I think we wouldn't be having this discussion. But it wasn't subdivided that way. A more generous portion, is given to that property that's on Woodbury Ave. But at the same point in time, sort of the nature of the topography and some other things, I think in this one specific case, there are some differences that say, it goes in favor of the applicant that they can build this, pretty substantial 2-story addition. So with that, I recommend approval.
Any discussion? Any comment? I'm going to support this motion because basically I agree with everything that the motion maker said. And I liked what Mr. Neese brought up about the streetscape. The streetscape will not change. However, I do think the property will be a big improvement for the neighborhood. And because the left side neighbor and the rear neighbor are removed, I just don't see this as imposing on them. And also because the changes in most of the variances amount to inches. Most of it is so small, the left yard, the rear yard, the open space is better. The building coverage changes, and 51 is a number we don't really like to hear, but 43 wasn't tiny either. And I think that for this change, the homeowner, the property owner is getting a lot for their percentages. And I think this will only be an improvement to the neighborhood. So that's what I have to say. Are we ready for a vote? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
No.
Mr. Rayam?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You are approved. You can breathe.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And for the next item, I am recusing myself, so
I wasn't told that.
you are in charge.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay. The next item of business is old business, Roman numeral 2C. The request of Brian T. and Kyle M. LaChance, owners, for property located at 86 South School Street, whereas relief is needed to demolish the existing porch, construct an addition with a deck, and replace an existing flat roof with a slanted roof on the existing dwelling, which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.521 to allow a 7-foot side yard where 10 feet is required. B, a 14-foot rear yard where 25 feet is required. C, 31% building coverage where 30% is the maximum allowed. D, 24% open space where 25% is the minimum. And 2, a variance from section 10.321 to allow a non-conforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 101, Lot 63, and lies within the General Residence B and Historic Districts. Who is here to speak to this application?
Good evening. I'm Brian LaChance, 86 South School Street. Thank you for your time. Thank you for reading it, and basically what we...
Hold on, I'm sorry.
We have 5 voting members. Does the applicant
Oh,
understand?
Yes, I'm
That's-
aware of the 5 voting members and the requirement of 4.
Okay.
So, thank you. So, this house we've owned for a little over 10 years, and it's met our needs quite well. A couple of years back, we got a dog from a rescue, and this dog was supposed to be a small dog and turned out to be an 86 or an 80-pound dog, quite big dog. And as you can see from the property, there really is no space for the dog. There's no grass, there's no fenced-in yard, and there is just basically an open deck into the house, into the kitchen, and so it does make for some, I would say, difficulty, especially in bad weather, of a dog coming in all wet, shaking all over everything, and making a mess in the kitchen. So what we've been hoping to do, or what we're hoping to do, is remove the deck and replace it with an enclosed entryway. And this entryway would give us the ability to keep things in the house a little bit nicer, but also to live. Now, the interesting part about this, there was back in the Athenaeum, they have a picture with the house with an entryway on the side. So this is kind of stepping back to where it was years and years and years ago. So that picture was actually included in the package. So there you go. So you can see the bump out on the side. We don't have any more specifics on it, but it does have the bump out on the side. So what we're hoping to do is expand it by basically over the deck by 1 foot additional. So if you would, we're asking for a 7-foot setback. Right now, it's about an 8.5-foot setback. You've got the 1 foot, and then you've got the overhang of the roof as well, affecting the setback. So that's where we came back with the 7 feet. And then having a rear entrance off the deck, which we don't currently have, so that you could go out of the entryway onto a small deck in the back, changes the setback, if you will, in the rear from 20 feet to 14 feet, because it's about a 6x6 space that we have in order to do the back deck. It does in fact take the lot coverage to 31%, I believe, from 29%, so it's a 2% increase. Not a significant increase, but enough of an increase to actually turn it into a variance. On the plus side, we take the open space from what was about 3.4% open space to 24%. And that's by taking out 3 parking spaces, basically of pavement, and digging that up, turning it into yard, and a porous deck, as well as a side yard. And you can see from here, it's taking out a lot of pavement. When we bought the house, they actually used to call this lot in this area the concrete jungle, because there is literally no grass around anywhere except for a very small strip. So that's the trade-off or the enhancement that we're hoping to have, and also to improve the water runoff. So as we look at the lot, that creates 547 more square feet of impervious or grass and impervious, or pervious, areas for water shedding and water runoff. Any questions on what we're trying to do, or?
Does the board have any questions on the actual application? Mr. Ram?
Yeah, although this is in your page 59 of our packet, it's your sort of description of how you meet the variance requirements. But in the first and third numbered items there, you talk about a heat pump. Is that something that's left over from other discussion? Because
So the heat pump is, if you look over to the far right side of the house, there's a heat pump sectioned off, and it's about a 3-by-5 foot area. It's not counted into the open space. It would be shielded with proper shielding so that it would be covered from the side yard. And that would actually be an additional portion of what we'd be looking for. It doesn't impact the variance on the right side, and it's already calculated into open square footage and building square footage.
okay, yeah. So you're saying it's part of your calculated building coverage?
It is, yes.
Okay. Although I actually think now you don't have to include it, but okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on the actual application? Okay, now, could you please address the variance criteria then, please?
So the variance criteria, as I understand them, contrary to the public interest and in the spirit of the ordinance, As far as the public interest goes, we believe this is a dramatic improvement for the property. We think that if you look at the property today, most people find it quite unappealing with all of the pavement, all of the concrete, all of the pavement, not much open space. Our neighbors have a patio very similar to this, or an enclosed porch pretty similar to this, that abuts our property. So in likeness, it looks very similar to what the neighbor's house looks like. They do have a completely slanted roof, which we kind of proposed, but the historic commission, when we brought that to them, said, no, we don't want the slanted roof. We want it to be more of a gable roof. So we made that change for the historic commission. But in likelihood, it meets the neighborhood and the design of the neighborhood right down to the next door neighbor's got one, right? Theirs is a little bit narrower, but their lot size on that side of the house is also narrower. We think that it enhances the neighborhood both from an aesthetics perspective as well as a water runoff perspective. We're creating an awful lot of property area that will absorb water where there was none. So we think that that's actually good from a public interest. And in the spirit of the ordinance, we don't think we're exceeding the space building by much, by 1%. We're giving a lot back to the open space. And if you look at the surrounding properties on the tax map, you'll find that a vast number, I would say more than 50% of them in our location around us are closer to than 7 feet to one lot line or the other. So we're not much different than the rest of the neighborhood. We're actually still further away from the lot line than a lot of them. And if you look on Humphrey Court, you'll see that the building envelope, there you talked about the 51%. I think there are several in there that exceed 51% as far as the coverage, and we're not anywhere close to that. So we think we're very close to what was looked for, and we're actually improving in the open space. Substantial justice without impacting to others. I think this does ease our burden, and I hate to say it's a burden because we purposely, got the dog. We just didn't think it was going to be as big as he was, and I'll be honest, as messy as he can be. He can love to go swimming in the river at Prescott Park and come home and then just shake all over the place. So it can be a little bit of a problem. But we don't think, granting these variances really creates any impact to our neighbors around us. Matter of fact, it should improve our property value, and hopefully, if I'm the neighbor on the left or the neighbor on the right, having our property value go up a little bit, I think will affect their property value positively. And then hardships, as far as hardships go, I've explained our hardship. I don't think changing or allowing this provides or creates any hardship on any other property. It doesn't impact them. We don't see it impeding or creating a problem for any of our neighbors. Matter of fact, we've talked to all of them, and unfortunately, they're not here to support it, but they're also not here to object to it, so.
Okay. I'm going to ask the board if they have any questions for the applicant as to his criteria. Mr. Ram?
Yeah, just one more question. What's your status before the Historic District Commission with regard to this addition?
So we've done the workshop 1, and tentatively, they liked everything that we did. They asked for 2 changes. One was the shed roof to a Gamper roof, which we've done. And the other one, we are discussing how we're going to then take the water runoff off the front of that roof that will hit the stairs and remediate that. And on the front of our house, we have a kind of a portico, kind of a cover over the front door that just jets out, doesn't have any support beams. So we're looking at that as an alternative, or perhaps a copper, whatever you call I don't even know a gutter on that side of the house just to catch the water.
Okay, yeah, gutters are useful. But in terms of your little small deck that you're adding and the stairway to approach it and whatnot, there's been no concerns from them?
No concerns
on
at
that?
all.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application? No one on Zoom, I assume? No one, is there anyone here to speak against the application? And is there anyone here to speak to, for, or against? Seeing no one rise, I'll close the public hearing. Board, discussions, motions? Excuse me?
He can sit if he wants.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was like, you are sitting, David.
Well, I know you think this is court, so that the attorney has to remain standing while the judge makes
Yes.
the decision.
Hit it again.
Mr. Neese?
I'm prepared to offer a motion unless people want to discuss this ahead of time.
I'm saying no, probably not.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to grant the variance as presented and advertised.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mantle, you're the second.
I'd like to start out with just a few general comments because they bear on a lot of the criteria here. This is a unusual lot. It's a small corner lot. It's got a lot of, where the house is located up on the, I guess it's the front right side of the lot as we look at it. Let's get those confused. It's got a lot, as has been pointed out right now, it's got a lot of asphalt on it. I think the proposed changes are a big improvement to that. It's a very minor increase in lot coverage, and the open space is increasing. I think the lot coverage, well, it's just a minor increase in lot coverage. So having said all that as an introduction, going through the criteria, I do not believe granting the variance will be contrary to the public interest. It will not affect the health, safety, or welfare of the neighborhood. There's no effect on light and air that I can possibly see. The rear setback does decline a little bit, primarily because of a deck, but the rear of the property abuts a neighboring parking lot for the large multifamily unit next door. It does not alter the essential characteristics of the neighborhood, as there are a lot of houses similar to this on small lots like this, and that is not changing. Granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. It remains a dense neighborhood, but this is not changing that and is not affecting that at all. Granting the variance does substantial justice. I cannot possibly see any benefit to the public by denial. In fact, I would argue that denying this variance would prevent the public from getting the benefits of the reducing the pavement coverage. And denying the variance would clearly cause harm to the applicant, which would prevent the enjoyment of his property. Granting the variance will not diminish the values of surrounding properties. I'm not sure this will have any dramatic effect on the value of properties, but certainly no evidence has been presented that it would reduce the value of the properties. There are a number of special conditions to this property. It's a small non-conforming lot. I shouldn't use the adjective because there are other lots just as small as this. It is an unusual shape. It's not rectangular. It has abutted to the rear by a large parking lot for a multi-unit building. It's a relatively small building envelope. The existing structure is already located in the front part, as I already mentioned. These are all special conditions. Because of these special conditions, many of which are different from other properties in the area, I don't see any fair and substantial relationship between the purposes of the ordinance and the specific conditions of this property, particularly given the relatively minor relief that the applicant is asking for.
Anything from Mr. Mantle for your second?
Mr. Neese is very complete. No.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, with that, I will ask for a vote. Mr. Mattson, the vote is to approve the variances presented and advertised. Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Rayam?
Yes.
Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mantle?
Yes.
And the acting chair votes yes, you are approved. Thank you. I don't have to gavel. I also didn't write down the vote totals, sorry.
That's okay, I got it.
And then I hope we can recall our chair for the next item of business.
This is the first
My bad.
I've ever seen that submitted into the. I know. You can read it?
Thank you.
Yeah, I can read it. I like that. It's like this big.
That was interesting. Okay, the next item of business is A, under new business. The request of Lorenzic Revocable Trust for property located at 209 Marcy Street, whereas relief is needed to construct a second-story addition and a one-story addition, which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.521 to allow a 12-foot rear yard where 25 feet are required. Excuse me. And 2, variance from section 10.321 to allow a non-conforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 103, Lot 2, and lies within the General Residence B and Historic Districts. Hello.
Good evening, Ann Whitney, presenting this for Kimberly and Larry Lorencic, I always get that wrong, who are in the back here. Before I get started, we do have a list of the abutters that have reviewed the plans and are supporting.
Thank you.
So as you can see, this property abuts Marcy and Gate Street, so it has two front setbacks. The Gate Street property line is just over 50 feet, so applying, because the address is on Marcy Street, applying the 25-foot rear setback basically bisects the lot and only leaves about 20 feet of coverage for a building area. So basically, we're asking for and we're proposing to expand the main body of the old Cape into a two-story structure. So the photos I'd had there sort of show a couple of streetscapes. I think it's a page back from that. Yes, that's view looking south from Hancock Street. There's a large two-story structure just before this, and then actually originally on this lot was Beth's house. It was moved from this lot a very long time ago. And then as you go up, up Marcy Street, almost all the structures are two-story. The second view is from Marcy Street looking down Gate Street, and it's a similar kind of thing where the bulk of the properties are two-story structures. The other part of this, we're asking for plus or minus 12 feet, which is what the existing residence is, and we're going to be bumping that up into a two-story structure. The other part of the project that's within the 25 feet is a small addition with a porch and a mudroom addition that's 14 and a half feet from that rear property line. We're okay on building coverage and open space. In fact, if this lot was had its address on Gate Street, it would be a very conforming lot. And if you look at, I've worked on many properties on Gate Street. It's one of the more conforming lots if you look at it along the Gate Street side, where it's got if the Gate Street address was the front, then we have 44 feet on that, what's now the left side where the parking is. So if you want to go to the page after the site plan. Yes, this shows that Gate Street, it shows the floor plans of what we're proposing in this Gate Street elevation, a photograph of that. Currently, on that east side, there's an existing dormer that has about 6 feet of headroom along that edge. So we're basically taking that whole story off and going up with a new roof system that would bring it into a full two-story. The result of that on that edge is it's less than, the eave height is less than a foot taller than that existing dormer height. But the building itself comes up 7 feet, which is still in keeping with a lot of the properties along that neighborhood. And the small addition with the mudroom and porch is just a small hip roof. And I've showed the existing as the dashed line, and you can see the relationship between the new roof and the existing profile. Again, on the next sheet, just shows that rear elevation, again showing the different, from the eave line and how that elevation will change. And there's a photograph of what it is currently, so it's going to be a little bit higher than that on that edge. So the circumstances that exist, this corner lot is an address and primary front line on Marcy Street and a secondary line on Gate Street. With the Gate Street, I just mentioned, was just over 50, so the 25-foot rear setback covers half of the property. The existing residence is set back currently 12 feet from that rear line. Adding this second floor will continue that non-conformity. And the side addition will have a 14.5 rear setback. That addition is located to best connect the residence between the existing kitchen and dining area, and it will, locating it there will allow minimal interior renovations. Again, I've already mentioned that the dormer on the rear roof, the height is just 6 feet, and that we aren't going to be raising that eave height a lot, although the general roof line will be higher. Again, if the property address was on Gate Street, this lot with the proposed additions would be conforming. The rear setback in that case would be 44 feet. The building area at 23.8 feet and open space at 52% are conforming. And given the density of the structures on Gate Street, this property is unusual with the amount of open space at the property lines. Before I get to the criteria, any questions?
Other questions? Yes, please.
Is there a front elevation?
A front elevation? Did I not show that? I guess I didn't, because we weren't asking for anything on that. I have that with the HDC. We've done 2 work sessions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. No, I didn't include the front elevation for the variance. Yes?
I'm waiting for the chair to recognize me.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, you recognize.
I'm deaf. So, question just before we get into the variance criteria, because our staff memo, this is a question to staff. It looks like the applicant also needs a variance from the front yard, left yard, and secondary front yard.
That's all my mistake. The front yard, left yard, and secondary yard are all conforming. I'm not sure what happened in my zoning table, but those are not the correct distances. I would urge you to refer to the site plan because they have the correct distances there. So just confirming, the only yard variance that they need is the 12-foot rear yard.
Okay,
So I apologize on that.
okay, thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
I don't see a site plan. I see designs.
Page
My page
76
1 of
of our
3.
packet.
Yeah,
1 of 3.
it's labeled schematic design.
Okay. I was looking for a site plan. I'm literal. Okay, thank you.
Yes?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Vam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You talked a little bit about, you've had a couple work sessions with the HDC. How is that process going so far?
Good. They had some concerns just because this, they hate to see a major change like this, but I think the consensus was, because we wouldn't be going forward, I already have a application in for the November meeting. The consensus was that they were going to be supporting this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
Okay, I'm going to go to the criteria for the variance. Variances are not contrary to the public interest and that the proposed additions are in keeping with the fabric of Marcy and Gate Street neighborhood. Most residences in this area, 2-story, and that many are built on or close to the front and side property lines. The variances are consistent with the spirit of the ordinance in that the setbacks are needed to maintain separation between structures. This narrow property still maintains setbacks that are greater than most of the properties along Gate Street. Substantial justice will be done as the variance will allow needed expansion of the living space without adversely affecting abutters, and we had pretty good support. The most immediate abutter didn't sign on that paper, but I had sent them an email when they'd reviewed the drawings, and they were good with that. These variances will not diminish the value of the surrounding properties. And the special condition of this property is the narrow depth of the lot and the location of the existing residence within the rear setback. The zoning restriction as applied interferes with the landowner's reasonable use of the property considering the unique setting of the property and its environment. Are there any other questions?
Further questions? No? Thank you. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in support? Anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this proposal? Anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Okay. Public hearing is closed then. Yes, Mr. Ram.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the request as presented and advertised.
And Mr. Mantle will second you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I too kind of share some of the trepidation that, converting a one-story cape into a two-story home, kind of tears at my heart a little bit. There's so few of them left in Portsmouth now, but, it's really the Historic District Commission's call. And, certainly there's a centuries-long practice of converting one-story homes into two-story homes, and it's a little tough to say that the applicant somehow can't do it when, as shown on page 75 of our packet, that pretty much every single other surrounding home is a two-story or, even maybe a little bit higher home. So really, in terms of the criteria, I think the most convincing thing that the applicant has presented and said is, look, if, I really have two front streets here, one on Gates, one on Marcy Street. If I was, viewing Gate Street as the front of the property, I would be in full compliance. Wouldn't even need to come before you for zoning relief. And I do think that's a pretty persuasive argument overall. So really just going through the specifics of the criteria. And to note, we also did get an email in support as well, though I think it's also one of the signatories on the what was passed out. So first two, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. So again, what we're really talking about here is the 12-foot setback. Again, for GRB, that would normally require 25 feet being there. So it is less than half, but it is a little odd in that our zoning ordinance says, hey, we want you to have a really deep backyard, but your side yards can be pretty small, because 10 feet on either side is what the side yards are. And so that kind of goes to what the applicant is kind of saying here is that, yeah, I have a building. This is really a discussion about its orientation rather than really talking about its overall impact to, the overall property and the density on the property. It just happens to be that the way my building is oriented, I'm in the rear yard. So I do think that's a mitigating factor. It is not encroaching any closer in terms of foundation. What's really we're talking about here is a pretty substantial increase in height from this one-story cape to a pretty full-story, two-story structure. So there is some imposition in terms of light and air, but again, I think the applicant's argument here that it's really kind of an orientation issue, I think is true, and that the surrounding properties again are two-story buildings. So I think in terms of fairness and overall impact, I think that it's in keeping with the essential characteristics of the neighborhood. Granting the variance to do substantial justice, this will allow the applicant to complete and make a more usable home out of this. Really, there's for the general public purposes, there's really nothing that says they should be especially restricted because of the nature of the orientation relative to Marcy Street versus Gate Street. A passerby wouldn't really perceive that type of issue. It would just look like any other sort of long edge home, two-story home that is pretty common in many parts of this neighborhood. Granting the variance would not diminish the value of surrounding properties. Again, we're talking specific to the relief that's being asked for here, of building simply upwards in an existing footprint. I don't see where there's going to be anything there would negatively affect property values. And then lastly, a little enforcement. What is it about this property that says that it has a hardship relative to the zone that it's in? And what's distinctive here is, again, it's got 2 front streets associated with it. It does have a substantial, backyard if it were on Gate Street that would meet the criteria. And so this is really just the original orientation of the home that the applicant is essentially working with, simply raising it up another story. So I do think that those are special conditions. It's a residential use in a residential neighborhood. It's going to look essentially like other properties. So with that, I recommend approval.
Does the second have anything to add?
No, Mr. Rayom is fairly complete as usual. It's just sad to see that all the colonials in the South End decide to bully this little cape.
I think it's
But
doing
now
okay.
it can be included with all the
doing
colonials.
Are there any further comments? Okay, then the yes vote sees the second story happen. Okay. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mennel?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Rayum?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item B, under new business. The request of 909 West End, West End LLC and PWED2 LLC owners for property located at 909 and 921 Islington Street. Whereas relief is needed to construct a sign at 921 Islington Street that will be servicing the businesses located at 909 Islington Street, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.1253.1 to allow a setback of 4 feet from a lot line where 5 are required. 2, variance from section 10.1253.2 to allow a sign to be erected and maintained between the heights of 2.5 feet and 10 feet above the edge of the pavement grades where a driveway intersects with the street and lies within an area bounded by A, the sidelines of the driveway and street, and B, lines joining points along said sidelines 2 feet from the point of intersection. And 3, variance from section 10.1224.9 to allow a sign and advertising a product or service not provided on the lot on which the sign is located, off-premises sign. Said property is located on Assessor Map 172, Lots 7 and 10, and lies within the Character District 4W. Is there anyone to speak to this petition?
Can I just make a point of clarification?
Please.
Yes, please.
In the second listed variance, section 10.1253.20, under point A, under point B, it says lines joining points along said sidelines to, it should say 20 feet
Okay, that
from
really
the
helps.
point of intersection.
Okay,
And I
thank you.
apologize for that.
Okay, I tried to pretend it said something. Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. Michael Leary of Sundance Signs for Chinburg Properties, which is both lots, West End LLC and the PWED2 LLC. The reason for the variances that we're asking for is that the existing sign is actually, we're pretty sure that is in the right-of-way of the road. Being in front of the telephone pole as it is. It's been there for many, many years. So making the new sign non-conforming, bringing it back, part of the plans show that there'll be a sidewalk running down the side of the driveway so pedestrians can enter and exit the property much, much safely. I don't know if you can see that in. This being the sidewalk right here. And that's adjacent right to the property line. and it's showing the sign just to the left in this drawing of that property line. Everything to the right in there is open driveway and parking that encompasses both the, I believe it's 865 Islington Street. That is their right-of-way entrance to that property as well. The 921 property is going to be developed as a cafe or a restaurant in the future. As I stated, both properties are owned by, overall owned by Chinburg Properties. There is no place on the property, if the sidewalk is done, to allow the signage to go. That's why we're asking for off-premise and looking to put it pretty much within the typical 5-foot setback that is needed for any freestanding sign. We would maintain the setback from the front property line. I think staff added the 2.5 to 20 feet above, which just fits that signage. The signage that runs down the next one down would be like the 1001 Islington Street, which actually sits on the property line adjacent to the sidewalk. Very similar signage is what we're looking to place for that to cover the number of tenants that are in that building. Any questions on that?
Mr. Neese?
Thank you. Steph, could you show the existing conditions picture again? So the reason I wanted to see this is, show this is for two reasons. With respect to that telephone pole, right now there's a sign for Louis just to the right of that telephone pole.
Yes.
And I'm just trying to place exactly where your sign is going to be relative to that pole and the existing Louis sign that's there right now. I'm assuming the Louis sign is going to be gone,
Yes.
but where is your sign going to be relative to the pole?
I think the pole is in the drawing as well.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what the symbol was.
Yeah.
I think it's right
Is
here.
it that circle with the diamonds in it?
Yes.
It's just to the south of that. You can barely see the pole, but it's this call out points to it. The PSNH points to the pole.
Okay. And would it be possible for you to show, that the zoning ordinance has what I would refer to as an exclusion area? This 20 feet from here, 20 feet from there. Could you kind of eyeball where that exclusion area is in relation to your sign? And don't touch the screen?
Please don't touch the screen.
And do you have your?
Oh, I'm sorry, we need your mic so we can hear what you're saying. Or the whole table.
Or the whole table? How about I use the pointer?
Okay.
This being the sign right here, the proposed sign showing in that spot, is that what you were asking?
I'm trying to understand where that spot is in relation to what the ordinance, where the ordinance says it shouldn't be.
Where it shouldn't be.
Right. I mean,
Okay.
how far away is it from the edges of where it shouldn't be? That's what I can't tell.
Well, where this is on the 921 property right now.
Right.
So that's off premise. If it was on their property, it would be to the right of this sidewalk. I can get over there, to the right of the sidewalk, which is the paved area. The sidewalk's actually in part of the paved area now. So it would be in the driveway.
Right. No, I guess that's not, I'm not getting my question across right. The ordinance says that, I can't,
I think,
the ordinance says that there's an area between the driveway edge and the street edge, which is basically 20 feet from the corners where they meet, and you draw, no? Anyway, the ordinance says something about where the sign is not supposed to be, and I'm trying to understand where this sign is in relation to where it's not supposed to be. Otherwise, we wouldn't be granting that variance.
And I'm not sure the applicant understands that, or I'm not sure if
I'm not sure
Staff
any of us
understands
understand that.
Well, there's a, if I'm correct on this, there's a 5-foot side setback,
Yep.
and there's a 5-foot front setback from the property line.
And there's yet another, there's more relief that's being asked for. It sounds like staff may have, he said staff added that, so it may have come out with a discussion with staff.
Yeah, so I can speak to that. It's the height of the sign. So there, in that 20-foot setback area of the corner that Mr. Neese was talking about, in that area, it's prohibited to have a sign between 2.5 feet and 10 feet, and that's a sightline issue.
Right.
So that's, you know, I don't have a scale here, but it would generally be, you know, of that shape-ish on the screen. And then the side yard setback, I'm sorry, not side yard setback, side boundary line setback is 5 feet from the front and 5 feet from the side. And he's proposing 4 feet from the side and in excess of 5 feet from the front. Does that answer your question?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm still trying to understand, the sidelines, the setbacks I understand.
Okay.
What I'm trying to figure out is, you're supposed to go 20 feet down the driveway from the road, and 20 feet from the road down the side, down the driveway. And then you draw a line from those two end points and you get a triangle. There's not supposed to be a sign between 2.5 and 10 feet in that triangle. I'm trying to understand on the drawing where this sign is in relation to that triangle. And the triangle's not drawn on there. I don't know where 20 feet up the driveway and 20 feet down the road is. So you may know, because you probably understand the scale of the drawing better than I do. So basically, where is 20 feet up the driveway from the street and 20 feet down the street from the driveway?
What that tells us.
You know, as an example, you've got those tick marks along the driveway, the little 3 lines. I don't know how far apart they are. As you go up the driveway, you got little 3-line tick marks that look at some regular distance. Are those 5 feet apart, or
I don't think they could.
do we know?
It would be, if we were going 20 feet back from the front property line, it would be almost to the edge of that drawing. The top edge of that drawing.
Which drawing?
This one that's in the tight detail. If we go back to page 3, it would be
So it's,
really hard to see.
Okay, so it would be, it's not this drawing either.
For reference, the parking spaces are 19 feet long.
I'm sorry?
The parking spaces are 19 feet long.
Oh, okay. Oh, so 20 feet is, thank you, that's very useful.
Yeah, and the sidewalk width is 5, so if we were to take the same thing, where we would be just behind those parking lines that are there. The parking lines are pretty much on the front property line.
Okay.
Okay, the measurement is from where the driveway intersects the street, not from the property line. And it looks to me, to be honest, like this sign might be outside of that area. If you start trying to measure, if you measure from the street, well, I don't know. That's what I'm wondering, where it's at. I can't tell where it's at. Correct. And I'm not going to tell from this discussion, so I'll stop.
Would you like more information before you make this decision?
Well,
If we use the,
I'll hold off until we do the discussion, and then we can decide that.
Okay.
Okay?
You don't think we're just getting deeper?
Yeah, I think we'll get deeper right now.
well, as it shows in the drawing, the shaded gray area is the sidewalk. We coming in from the street, there's a bit of a grass area There's some indent parking that's there. And then we get to the pole, which we're seeing in the photograph. So that is about 15 feet to that point. So yes, if we're following the 5-foot setback, we're pretty close to the 20-foot setback from the intersection of the street, not the property line.
I'm done.
You're done? Okay. Do you want to, do you have, yes, is that a hand raised?
I don't know.
No.
Why don't we go on?
Okay. You may proceed.
Okay. So I'll go down through the criteria.
That should clear it up.
As we outlined, granting the requested variance would benefit the public interest. The general public would benefit by the grant of this variance, in that the identification of the businesses at 909 Isling Street would be made easier having this properly located signage at the roadway. By allowing the signage location as requested, the board would improve traffic safety in the area and benefit the public by creating safer conditions. The proposal before the board this evening is not excessive and is not contrary to the spirit and intent of the ordinance, sign ordinance, is to permit and regulate signs in a manner that protects the public safety and enhances the economic advantages enjoyed by the Portsmouth property owners. The spirit of this ordinance is observed by the size and style that fits within current sign ordinance provisions. The applicant believes that this sign is located as proposed is adequately placed to identify the 909 Islington Street businesses to the general public. Number 3, granting the requested variance would result in substantial justice being done. As board members are well aware, the test whether or not substantial justice is done is whether or not there's benefit to the general public, and denying the variance would outweigh the hardship on the owner's applicant. Seeking the variance, and this is the instance, well, there's some bad writing in there. I don't know what happened to that. I apologize. There is no benefit to the general public in denying this requested variance, but on the contrary, the public is actually benefited by granting the variance. And granting the variance would increase the safety and create an eyesore, more confusing situation, since there is no benefit to the public in denying the variance. Substantial justice would be done by granting the variance. We'll go to number 4. No diminution in value of the surrounding properties result from the granting of the variance. The property in question lies in the midst of Islington Street's commercial district. The signage would in no way diminish surrounding property valuations, as can be seen in the attachment. The style and color of the sign is tastefully done. And number 5, hardship. Due to the constraints of the frontage, not allowing this request would create hardship to the tenants not being able to allow their business to have proper identification signs and drivers on Islington Street. So in conclusion, it is the position of the applicant that the 5 criteria necessary for the board to grant the request of the variance are met within the application. As such, it is respectfully requested that the board grant this variance as advertised and presented.
Other questions?
A couple questions. I recognize it says that the sign is 12 feet above grade. Exactly how, I mean, just the sign, how tall is it?
The sign itself, I believe it's around 8.
It's posts and brackets, it says 8, I don't know.
It says 12 feet above grade, but doesn't that tell us how?
It's 12 minus 4, it's 8.
Yes.
So it's 8, it is 8 feet.
Yeah, the tenant area is a little plus of 5 feet. The address area on the top carries the rest of that. The scale on the posts that are down below are definitely not to scale, which is noted. That's definitely more than 4 feet.
It does have the nice sky behind it, though, so that makes you feel
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot better about it.
And then I think my other question is to staff. So our little box on existing and proposed conditions, does that accurately convey all of the relief that is being asked for? Because it looks like the front yard setback is fine. It looks like it's just the side yard setback that is the problem.
It's all in the asterisk
Correct.
underneath.
So if I can say, the idea on the side lot setback, because of the sidewalk that's being put in, we're actually asking it to go on the adjacent property. So moving it further onto the adjacent property, because it is off-premise advertising, doesn't help anything for confusion. We want it as close to that property line as we can, but knowing there needs to be some space next to the sidewalk. We were looking for the 4 feet off the property line.
It's 4 feet on the 921 property, right? Not the 909.
4 feet into the 921 property, yes.
Yeah.
That's what
Because
makes
it's
it
on
the
921.
off-premise.
Yeah, it's on 921.
And then the table doesn't show anything about the 20-foot line from the intersection points, and that's the bulk of the text, so.
That's the one that I really cannot fathom. I mean, most of the others I feel like I understand. Yes, it's on an adjacent property. Yes, these are the dimensions. Yet I don't know how wrong we'll go if we don't know where that triangle is. No, I don't know. Anybody?
Can we call a friend?
Yeah, just with the 20, with the 20 feet, and having the parking space as 19 feet deep can help.
That does help.
If you triangulate that, and just it's the concept that you can see around the corner in a vehicle.
Yes, vaguely. Okay, I'm going to go to the public now. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Okay. The public hearing is closed. Now we can, yes, Mr. Neese.
So I don't have any problems with the setback issue. I don't have any problems at all with the idea of putting the sign on the adjacent property. It all makes perfect sense to me. I am concerned about the problematic variance because I don't really know where that sign is in relation to that. I went down there today and I noticed the Louis sign, which is there, which perhaps is not permitted. But anyways, the Louis sign that is there is roughly, it seems, in the area where this sign is going to be. It might be a little lower than the bottom sign on this, but it does obscure the view as you're trying to pull out of the parking lot towards that end, whatever direction that is, west or whatever. So I'm a little concerned with that part of the variance without knowing precisely where the sign is in relation to that triangle that we're talking about. I know we've got a rough idea from looking at the size of the parking spaces, but I'm not really comfortable with knowing exactly where it is for two reasons. I'm not sure the variance is actually needed unless the planning staff plotted that out, and maybe they did, and that's why they put it on there. And if it's outside that area, then, you know, my objection goes by the wayside. But if it's within that area, then I'm
Right.
struggling a little bit with whether to grant the variance depending where it is in that area. I don't know, Steph, do
Within
you have
that
any
area?
information to add on that?
I did not plot it out. I saw the height,
Right.
and to be safe, I added it. But I think it's totally fair if you need more information to request it.
I personally would feel more comfortable with more information rather than either approving or denying it based on not knowing where it actually is in relation to that triangle.
Yes, Ms. Murchison.
So I would agree, and this is actually something, although I don't, normally like us to take field trips, but it almost would be worth it to me just to see the property, because I do think that it is a concern in terms of pulling out of that property, in terms of being able to see, and there's going to be more development there, because we approved some stuff for 909, or
Well, the
there's a way of
restaurant
just sort
is
of
going
putting a stake in as to where it's gonna be and we can all see it, but I really am having a hard time visualizing where this will go because there's gonna be associated site improvements that aren't there right now, so.
Mr. Ram.
Madam Chair, I move that we postpone further consideration of this application to our November meeting and request of the applicant that they work with planning staff to provide a drawing that shows the impact of the sign relative to the, sorry, let me scroll up here. Specifically, the relief needed to allow a sign to be erected and maintained between the heights of 5 and 10 feet above the edge of the pavement guides, that very long thing that we're concerned about. So that's my motion.
Second.
Second, okay. Is there any discussion before we vote?
Yeah, just, again, I think there is some genuine concern here. We just don't know where it's at, unfortunately, and I guess the lesson request back to planning staff is, let's make sure that the applicant's information fully addresses all the criteria, especially one that's so convoluted and arcane as this particular one. And I think we understand what the concern is, but maybe there's also an opportunity for the applicant to say, hey, you know what, if I move it 6 inches back, I'm going to be out of there. I don't even need this relief anymore. Let's do our due diligence and our homework over the course of the next month to figure that out. I don't think there's anything changing here in the near future with regards to businesses and whatnot that is gonna say that that's a significant impact. So
Okay. So, Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Manow?
Yes.
Ms. Marchison?
Yes.
Mr. Ram?
yes,
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So you will be able to speak with the planning department to find out exactly what it is that we would like, and we will see you in November.
We can absolutely plot that out. I'm not
Okay,
concerned about
yes,
that.
some of these are pretty difficult to understand without seeing, I think.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you
Perfect.
for your time.
Thank you very much. I'll see you next month.
Thank you.
And finally,
Well, can we take it, I'm
oh,
sorry.
do you want to take a 5-minute?
I think if we could, if that's possible.
It's the last one.
Yeah, okay, okay. I thought you might want to come up and oppose or speak in favor just to get out of the seat, but, okay, we are going to take a 5-minute recess. The zoning board meeting of October 21st, 2025 is back in session. And we're about to go to new business item C. The request of 35 Pines LLC owner for property located at 295 Maplewood Avenue, Unit 1. Whereas relief is needed to create a second driveway, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to allow 0% open space where 25 is the minimum. And 2, variance from section 10.1114.31 to allow a second driveway where only one is permitted. Said property is located on Assessor Map 141, Lot 35-1, and lies within the Character District 4-L2 and Historic District. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Patrick Lavoie of 217 Austin Street. I'm speaking on behalf of 35 Pines LLC and trying to get to, to the City of Portsmouth Zoning Board. I am respectfully requesting approval of 2 variances related to my property at 295 Maplewood Ave, a variance for a secondary driveway and a variance of open space. To make possible, I intend to purchase the abutting lot on tax map 141, lot 34, for the purpose of creating this additional driveway. This project is intended to improve safety and accessibility while maintaining the character of the neighborhood. The second driveway variance, the proposed second driveway of 295 Maplewood Ave will provide a safe, dedicated access point that reduces reliance on this street parking. I should have brought my glasses. Sorry. This is especially important for daily use.
Would you like some readers?
Yeah.
Let it not be said we're not helpful.
Yeah.
Maybe, does it work?
All right. Thank you. Wow, this is night and day. Okay. Secondary driveway variance. The proposed second driveway at 295 Maplewood Ave will provide a safe, dedicated access point that reduces reliance on street parking. This is especially important for daily use and improves accessibility. The project ensures the property continues to serve its intended use in a way that is both functional and consistent with the neighborhood character. The open space variance, no dominion in surrounding property values will occur. Oh, do you want me to address those? Should I go through the ordinance, the
criteria?
criteria?
Yes, please.
Okay. Open space variance, no diminution. Thank you. Barber, not diminution in surrounding property values will occur. The project will improve the overall function and appearance of the property, ensuring off-street parking. Orderly and safe. This will complement surrounding properties rather than diminish their value. Second, granting the variance will not be contrary to the public interest by reducing on-street parking reliance and ensuring safe access to the site. The driveway project supports the public interest in safety and orderly traffic flow, especially when people come off of Maplewood Ave and come into Jackson Hill. The spirit of the ordinance will be observed. While the ordinance seeks to preserve open space, the requested variance balances this by creating safer site access. The character of the neighborhood will remain intact as the project respects both the scale and the look of surrounding properties. Substantial justice will be done The benefit to the applicant, safer and more functional property use outweighs any minimal impact. On open space, denying the variance would impose an unnecessary burden without a clear public benefit. 5, literal enforcement would result in unnecessary hardship. Strict enforcement would prevent the creation of safe, functional driveway access despite the property having adequate size through the addition of lot 141-35. The unique configuration of the parcel makes this variance necessary to achieve reasonable use of of the property. And that's what I got.
Okay.
Sorry, I was jumbled all over the place, and I don't read well. I apologize.
Are there questions? Yes, Ms. Marchison.
So I just want to clarify a couple of things. So this parking space, this driveway
Yes,
would serve, there's 2 units in this building?
there's 3.
There's 3. It would serve unit 1?
It would serve Unit 1, the lower condo, yes.
Okay, and then there are, because some of these drawings that we have here are quite old, because in the back, there's a driveway in the back now, because it just shows that there's a deck.
There's a deck, and there's 2 parking spots. So if you see the deck, can I use this pointer?
Yep.
So this is the deck here for Unit 2 and 3, and then they have their parking spots here and here. I'm looking to put my parking spot here.
So those limited common areas, unit 2 and 3 are the parking spaces, are the driveways per se?
So the limited common areas are their parking spots, and their limited common areas are also their decks.
Okay, so this is a question to staff, those limited common areas constitute one driveway?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second driveway, it seems there's a tree there, but what's currently there?
There's a couple of yew bushes, just a couple bushes. And the unit owns 7 feet 3 inches away from the building. And I'm in the process of purchasing the other side of the crabapple tree. So, I don't open this button. So, there's right here, there's bushes right there now, right in here. And from the tree to here is 11 and a half feet. And to not kill the tree, it'd be 10 and a half feet to put a stone cuff around it. So that'd be 10 and a half feet for a driveway to go all in here.
Okay. So, a question back to staff, because this is, there really is not a very detailed description of what a driveway is. It says that his has to get a driveway permit? What is that?
It's a permit through DPW.
Okay. And then what part, this lot is being merged? What's being merged on this lot?
Yeah, so there's 2 existing lots. There's the lot as shown for the condos, and then there's the lot owned by Eversource for the utility pole.
Okay.
So one side of the tree is pretty much owned by me, except for 2 feet that they were gonna give me an easement for, but then they gave me a chance to buy the whole chunk.
Okay. All right. I just want to be clear on that.
So I have a question. Do you have to back out of that lot onto Maplewood, or can you go straight through?
No, I wouldn't be coming off of Maplewood. I would be on the
Coming the other way?
other way.
Okay.
So I would probably go up northwest and pull straight in, and then at night pull back out and go.
Okay, it was hard for me to see there was a curb cut, so that's why.
Yep,
I'm
and that
asking.
would be from the Jackson Hill side.
Okay.
I think that's all I have.
Further questions? Yes, Mr. Ram.
Yeah, so the ownership of all this is, I think, a central question. I'm kind of confused about what it is. So currently, the existing property that your unit number 1 is part of is a condo association that owns that property.
Correct.
If Eversource sells you the property, is it going to be linked to the condo property, or is it just going to be a piece of property that you own?
I think we're gonna link it to the whole condo association because they had concerns that said, say if that wasn't attached to the Maplewood Condo Association and I sell my unit and then whoever, they could park whatever they want on that little piece of property, or they could do things that the condo association would not be able to vote on.
Okay.
And so they were concerned, so it now is going to be merged for 295 Maplewood Ave.
Okay, excellent. Where are you at in that process of purchasing it as a condo association then? So presumably the condo association would need to purchase it, and then within the condo association, you guys can determine where the money comes from, if you give all the money for the purchase or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. So I'm supposed to have a meeting with them on Thursday. I've already had the purchase and sale. I already had representation look at it. We have some concerns, but we're going to address those and then go forward with negotiations on price.
Okay. So you have a signed purchase and sales agreement with Eversource
I
at this
don't have
point?
the signed. I have it in my possession in email so that my counsel could look at it.
Okay.
And then Thursday's meeting is us buttoning this up so we can move forward with it.
Okay. Yeah, and then I guess my second question really is for staff. So now, if this piece of property gets appended to the condo association's property, so I know currently it says that they have 0% open space, right? Because they're essentially using it all as driveways and decks. However, now all of a sudden you're going to have some space that has trees on it and bushes that'll be more than 5 feet wide. Suddenly becomes open space that is part of the property. We do not have, they are not currently meeting open space requirements. I know in your, in the staff report, you say open space 0 existing, 0 proposed. But the point of the matter is when they add on this little piece of property, now suddenly they're going to have open space that they are now going to be violating. Do they need another variance to then go and reflect the fact that they're not meeting the permitted 25% open space?
It was my understanding that when that piece of land is purchased and the driveway is constructed, what's left is not going to meet the definition of open space, so it will still be 0.
Agreed, after the driveway is constructed, but the construction of the driveway, which is before us as a variance, is something that would negatively impact open space, right? So it's something, I guess in my mind, it's something that we need to be considering and documenting the fact that you had some open space, but through creating a driveway that we're going to authorize, you're not going to have that open space anymore. Should they not be not allowed to create a driveway if it's going to be less, it's going to be removing, they're going to have something less than 25% open space after they append this piece of property on. If they put a driveway on, they're going to have even less than 25, whatever percentage that they have. But to me, that requires a
But
variance.
if they're not allowed, nothing will change.
Well, he's saying they go from 0% to temporarily having some
Temporarily,
percentage
I
to
know,
back to 0.
temporarily.
And then they're going to go back to 0. But that, to me, requires a variance to be able to say, I want to put something on my property that goes and puts me below the open space requirement when I had something that had an open space.
I guess my interpretation was by advertising that a driveway is going to go there, that is the end product, and that is what he's getting relief for, is 0% end product, 2 driveways.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so you do have a variance to allow 0% open space where 25% is the minimum. Okay, got it. Okay, I'm feeling better about that.
Okay. Are there other questions? This has been quite a night. Are there other questions? Good, okay. I mean, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And now I have to ask the public, is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Anybody online? Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak to, for, or against? Okay. The public hearing is closed.
It wasn't red, that's what threw me off.
It wasn't read into the record?
Oh, no, it wasn't read on our
Zero
table.
wasn't red on the sheet.
Oh,
Yeah.
Just add it to the list.
poor Steph's had a rough week. Okay, what would you like to do?
That way.
What would you, yes.
Yeah, just a little bit of discussion, I guess. I mean, I kind of understand what the applicant's doing. It's kind of interesting. I mean, there's clearly an opportunity here to buy this little itty bitty piece of land that Eversource owns for whatever reason. I think so long as they're not having access to Maplewood Avenue, which would be something that I would maybe make a stipulation just to make it crystal clear that we're not allowing any kind of driveway access to Maplewood Avenue. It would be entirely to either Jackson Hill Street or Marsh Lane, depending on what you call it. Apparently there's different interpretations of what that's called. I guess my only other concern, and it just comes, normally I would have expected that there would be a signed purchase and sales agreement in place before we would go and give a variance. We're basically giving a variance to somebody else's property without there even being a signed purchase and sale agreement in place, documenting that this could potentially happen. Obviously, still an opportunity, that presumably the purchase and sales would be contingent upon getting board approval for putting a driveway on it, right? We don't have that. So, and I don't know, I'll rely on Ms. Margison's gut instinct as an attorney, but the attorney that I have would probably whisper something to me about that. So.
You have a feeling?
I agree with Mr. Rayum. I think that if we do approve this, I think we do need the two stipulations. One, that this will not be accessed off of Maplewood Avenue, and two, that this approval is subject to a completed purchase and sale agreement. Okay. Well, actually, a completed transaction.
Right.
Right.
But usually it's a purchase and sale that has come before us. And then usually when they get the variance, this actually goes through, but I definitely, because we are giving a variance for a property that is not owned by this applicant.
Okay.
And it would be kind of weird to have like a driveway on an itty bitty piece of property.
There is
I'm sorry, if you
A property, the
you may
public hearing
speak,
is.
I know.
Oh, okay.
No, I think,
hearing is
no,
over.
all right, I can't let you
done.
talk. But it does seem like we might need to know this.
There is an email from Eversource in your packet.
Yes.
Sure, but
Yeah, but it doesn't really say anything.
No, it's very promising.
Fair, fair.
That's
Okay.
why I was like,
Okay. So, given those contingencies,
Can we make the approval conditional upon a purchase and sales
I
agreement?
believe we can,
So
can.
that the approval doesn't kick in
until,
so that we don't have to deny it now, they come back and
yes,
whatever.
Steph said, yes, we can do that.
We don't want 909 Islington Street.
No, we
again.
don't want to see you again. All right. A motion? With conditions?
two stipulations.
Yes.
I'll make a motion. I may need a little help on the wording of the conditions here. I move that we grant the variance as had proposed and advertised, subject to two stipulations. The first is that the driveway be constructed in such a way that it does not exit, it is not accessed via Maplewood Avenue. And the second stipulation is that this variance is contingent on the completion of a sale of lot, whatever it is,
Purchase.
completion of
Purchase and sale.
completed purchase of the Eversource lot to the applicant.
I will second, but I'd like to reword the second stipulation if I
Please
could.
do.
Okay. The second stipulation, I would say that this variance is contingent on the execution of a completed purchase and sale of purchase and sale agreement.
Thank you, Counselor.
It's map 141 lot 34, according to map geo.
Oh, David with map geo. What is the official?
Are you making a motion?
I made the motion.
Did you
And I
get it?
seconded.
Oh, you seconded. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, working through the criteria, granting this variance would not be contrary to the public interest. This is a very small property, even with combining, with the addition of the lot that is going to be purchased. This will have, putting a driveway here will have no effect on the health, safety, and welfare of the public. It will not have any impacts on light and air. It will have no impact on the essential characteristics of the neighborhood. Granting the variance observes the spirit of the ordinance. This is a relatively minor change. It will actually help get off-street parking in the area. Granted, it's only one space. The variance will do substantial justice. I really cannot see any benefit to the public by denial. Yes, that is a small amount of open space, but I think if I read the property card right, the lot over there that's being joined is only 200 square feet or 225 square feet, something like this. Denial of the variance would cause a loss to the applicant. It would make it more difficult for him to run his business and operate his business. Granting the variance will not diminish the values of surrounding properties. This is a very minor change. I suspect that the only thing people will notice is the cutting down of the tree, and that is not going to affect the value of the surrounding properties. Literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. This property has some special conditions. The existing property only has parking for 2 of the 3 condos associated that are on the building. There's not enough room on the property to put in a 3rd parking space. That will be rectified should the applicant be able to purchase the small adjacent lot to provide parking. Given that it is also a corner lot on a relatively busy street, Maplewood Avenue, which is why the stipulation is required to prevent access from the property directly onto Maplewood. Given the special conditions, there's no real fair and substantial relationship between the purposes of the ordinance. There's no reason to deny a second driveway on this lot, which would be the specific application of the property. There's currently 0% open space. This does not change the amount of open space that's going to be there. That's all I have.
Does the second have anything to add?
Yes, in terms of spirit and intent of the ordinance, health, safety, and welfare is within the purview of this board. I think with the stipulation that it has to be off of, I forget what that name is, Jackson Hill Street, as opposed to Maplewood, and the fact that it has to go through the driveway permit process, really addresses that concern. I think I have, and the rest of the board has, and again, the 2 stipulations are obviously very important in terms of this application, because we are in essence granting a variance for property that is not owned by the applicant.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, then, Mr. Mattson.
Yes.
Mr. Rayam.
Yes.
Ms. Margison.
Yes.
Mr. Mantle.
Yes.
Mr. Neese.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So you are approved under those conditions. You don't have to come back to us. You just need to speak
Public
with
Works.
planning department. Yes.
We can chat about that tomorrow if it would be helpful.
Yeah, you don't have to see us again. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We're adjourned.